What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today is not a day that we have a lot of guests. However, there's a lot of news that we have to catch up on over the last couple of weeks, but specifically this week, we have seen quite a bit of news, both in the state of Pennsylvania and nationally. So we're going to dive into a lot of different stories. We're going to jump all over the place. So stick with me. We're going to start nationally. We're going to start with Jon Stewart, as you guys have seen on TV and as the thumbnail of this video, pushing for the PACT Act. We will get into what that bill entails, and we will also dive a little bit into the implications of the strategy, the furthering of rhetorical battles between what we can do as Democrats and fighting for these types of issues, healthcare, etc. And then it got tied up with another bill and a reconciliation bill. So the CHIPS Act, which is also another bill that is likely to pass. At this second, it's not passed yet, but it is likely to pass once the House and the Senate come together and vote to pass it. And that is a bill that we will dive into. Then we will dive into Kansas and the primary election that they had last night, the reaction to proposed removal of a constitutional right in the Kansas Constitution for the right for an abortion. After that, as the thumbnail said, and more. After that, we have the PA Supreme Court upholding Act 77, which we will dive into. I will answer any questions that you might have on that, which is the mail-in-ballot programming here in Pennsylvania. And then just to top it all off, because as I was messing around earlier, I did come across the Alex Jones trial and his reaction to his lawyer completely blowing it, frankly, and giving up all of his text messages and his whole phone details. So we will go over a video over that. There's a lot of clips and articles today, so feel free to check out, if you're just listening to the show, check out the video version of the show if you want to see the videos, or I will try to put all the links in the description box of this video or the audio version of the show. So with that, we will start with the PACT Act, and we have a few things in it. Frankly, ties pretty well with discussions over Pennsylvania, because Pat Toomey was one of the leaders that kind of sunk it the first time. So here, I'll lay the groundwork while we're here. We'll talk about what this act is and how it affects veterans. So we're on the Veterans Affairs website here, which is the VA. For anyone who doesn't know, this is how veterans receive health care. It is a government-run healthcare program specifically designed for veterans. It has been fought for vehemently by, frankly, progressive people and I'll say some Republicans as well. So you can see in the past where alliances between John McCain and Bernie Sanders, they aligned to provide health care for veterans. And this is why, and we will get further into the rhetorical piece of this, this is why it's important to remember that draped in the flag rhetoric, that draped in the flag imagery of being, oh, I'm hyper patriotic, I'm this, I'm that. Sometimes it's just nonsense, and the real patriots are the ones that are going to fight for the people when they come home, not for the weaponry, not for the planes, the bombs, etc. It's fighting for the men and women, and that's kind of what Jon Stewart was highlighting in his speeches, and I really appreciate him fighting for these things. Was saying, like, the Army is not made up of just bombs and guns and bullets and whatever, tanks. The real backbone of any army or armed force, and the reason why we have a lot of the freedoms that we have today, is because there are people that are willing to put their lives on the line to fight for us. Now, when they come home, many of the people that will provide this $800 to $900 billion, because remember, we don't really know how much money is allocated for the United States military budget. We just know that it's somewhere in that 800 to 900 billion, and there's a giant slush fund that goes with that. That is never questioned. That is never questioned in the military-industrial complex of this country. That is always a given. The increases are always voted through. But if you dare ask for this bill, which provides expanded healthcare access to people that were involved with burn pits and toxic substances, whether they be in the military or in reaction to 9/11, which is a similar type of first responder bill, that when the building was burning, these things were getting in people's lungs and they would cause cancer, they would cause significant medical issues. So the PACT Act, as we are looking here, is a new law that expands VA healthcare and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances. As I said, this law helps us provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. So here, like, it shows you all the expansions of the benefits that you have here. It expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposures and veterans of the Vietnam, Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras. So if you were aware of like the Agent Orange stuff that was used in Vietnam, these are the type of things that our soldiers were exposed to, this chemical warfare that it wasn't chemical warfare that harms our people, as well as being, frankly, borderline or potentially war crimes abroad. This is the stuff that hurts our people. This is the stuff that injures and removes years off of our people's lives, just by being around it, just by being exposed to it. John Stewart had previously fought for a similar bill that provided healthcare for first responders on 9/11, and this is why it's important, is because like bringing that celebrity is it pushes it to the forefront. A lot of us, and frankly, like, I follow stuff pretty closely, but even this like kind of skated my radar for a bit because it's not constantly put out in the news until someone like John. Well, frankly, it was also supposed. We'll go into this now, frankly, and I will transition back to myself here. This bill seems non-controversial, and it is. It is not controversial whatsoever. The reason that, and I will show you Pat Toomey here in a second. The reason, and I'm going to make sure that I get through an ad because there's always ads on this stuff. This is, don't get business internet from Verizon. Sorry. The importance of this is that Pat Toomey and the Republicans shot down this bill. So it was voted on the first time. It was going to pass. Then what happens is it has to go to the House, and then they reconcile. But in this first vote that the Senate was going to take, once Manchin and Schumer came to an agreement regarding a spending bill using the reconciliation process, which, again, for those who don't know, reconciliation is something that happens every year. You get one shot at it to change. Basically, it's a budgeting process, and you can only affect things that are affected by the budget. So reconciliation allows you to pass something with a simple 51 majority. Frankly, if you have 50 Democrats or 50 Republicans, the vice president can break the tie. So once the reconciliation package, which is supposed to address climate change, is supposed to invest in things like electric vehicles, it's supposed to boost our reaction, frankly, because we're not proactive in regards to climate change, but our reaction and hopefully proaction in preventing further issues for climate, and as well as providing benefits for people that need it, which shouldn't be controversial, but these things are. So in response to that, the Republicans shot down the PACT Act, which functionally says, sorry, veterans, if you have this lung issue, whatever it might be, from these burn pits, sorry, we just don't like this other bill, so we're going to shoot this one down, as well as the CHIPS Act. So that's where it starts to get infuriating, because if a Democrat did this, it would be much, much bigger of a deal. I can guarantee you that, because these folks are the ones that are faux patriots. They act like they are the definition of what patriotism is and what an American is. They're wrong. So here I have a clip from State of the Union with Jake Tapper, and we're going to play it. We're going to listen to what Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who hopefully John Fetterman will be replacing come this November, has to say about this bill. So we will start that, and I will mute myself.
Access for veterans who have been exposed to toxic burn pits. There are veterans currently, right now, camped out on the Capitol steps, not to mention veterans all over the country, including ones I'm sure you've been hearing from in Pennsylvania, upset about this. And this delay has a real impact. I want you to take a listen to this from Danielle Robinson this morning. Her husband, Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, who the bill is named after, he died from lung cancer attributed to burn pit exposure. Here she is this morning talking about how the cost of how long this is taking to get done.
We know a veteran who actually took his life because of the delay. He was denied from the VA and he lost his private health insurance. He would qualify under this new bill. Once he learned about the delay, he actually did take his own life because he wanted to spare his family of losing their home.
Now, to be clear, she's talking about a previous delay, not the one you caused last week. But what do you say to those who find it impossible to believe that of all the multi-trillions of dollars in our federal budget, this is where you and Republicans decided to take a stand?
Here's what you need to keep in mind, Jake. First of all, this is the oldest trick in Washington. People take a sympathetic group of Americans, and it could be children with an illness, it could be victims of crime, it could be veterans who've been exposed to toxic chemicals, craft a bill.
Remember, as we go, and I'm sorry I didn't mute myself, my mic. Remember, as he's going into this diatribe, that this bill is exclusively about that. This bill, the PACT Act, is exclusively about the veterans. So the remainder of this is just complete bullshit. So just keep that in mind.
To address their problems, and then sneak in something completely unrelated that they know could never pass on its own, and dare Republicans to do anything about it, because they know they'll unleash their allies in the media and maybe a pseudo-celebrity to make up false accusations to try to get us to just swallow what shouldn't be there. That's what's happening here, Jake.
But this,
my
this
efforts,
was
my
in
Republican
the bill.
colleagues.
This was in the bill that passed the Senate last month.
Yeah, and we were promised that we'd have an opportunity to offer an amendment to change this, and then, of course, that was reneged on, so people hadn't had a chance to be socialized about this. Let me be very clear. Republicans are not opposed to any of the substance of the PACT Act. My honest Democratic colleagues will fully acknowledge that my objection, and if I get my way, I get my change, it will not change by one penny any spending on any veterans program. What I'm trying to do is change a government accounting methodology that is designed to allow our Democratic colleagues to go on an unrelated $400 billion spending spree that has nothing to do with veterans and that won't be in the veteran space.
One of the questions that I think people have about what you're claiming is a budgetary gimmick is the VA budgets will always remain subject to congressional oversight. They can't just spend this money any way they want. And from how I read this legislation, it says that this money has to be spent on health care for veterans who suffered exposure from toxic burn pits.
This is why they do this sort of thing, Jake, because it gets very deep in the weeds and very confusing for people very quickly. It's not really about veteran spending. It's about what category of government bookkeeping they put the veteran spending in. My change, the honest people acknowledge, it will have no effect on the amount of money or the circumstances under which the money for veterans is being spent. But what I want to do is treat it for government accounting purposes the way we've always treated it for government accounting purposes, because if we change it to the way that the Democrats want, it creates room in future budgets for $400 billion of totally unrelated extraneous spending on other matters. That's what I want to prevent. We are spending way too much money to hide behind a veterans bill. The opportunity to go on an unrelated $400 billion spending spree is wrong, and we shouldn't allow it.
So that is Senator Pat Toomey, and sorry, got an ad running already. That is Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania justifying his opposition to the PACT Act, which has there's no depth, there's no context, there's no evidence, there's nothing of substance there. It is just nonsense. And here, and I'm going to double check that there is no ad, hopefully. Okay, so here is in reaction to hopefully highlight some of the positives of passing a bill such as this. The one pseudo celebrity that he is referencing, Jon Stewart. So here, we'll check that out.
Let me just say that I think the turning point of this occurred when last week, in their anger, they let the world know what had happened, and that put the pressure on people to turn their votes around. Thank you, thank you.
Potty mouth. I want to apologize for cursing last week.
No, you didn't.
I don't know what happened. Normally, I'm very demure. Leroy, my brother. Talked to Leroy 4 years ago in my office.
A couple pictures.
And I made a promise to him. I said, I'm not going to let you go, my brother, and we're going to get this done. And guess what? We got it done. And Rosie and Leroy are...
We love you, Leroy.
Love you, Leroy.
Love you, Leroy. That's Leroy. But I will say this. I'm not sure I've ever seen a situation where people who have already given so much had to fight so hard to get so little. And I hope we learn a lesson.
Thank you.
Never again.
There we have it. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it till the day I die, I guess, and I may have mentioned it when Ashley was on, Ashley Ehas, who is a veteran. The people that have put their lives on the line for our country, for our freedoms, for our fundamental rights should not have to worry about a goddamn thing. Those folks, however they served, I don't even want to get into the specifics of, this, blah, blah, blah. If you are willing to put your time, effort, money, life on the line, we should forever be indebted to those people. But instead, we have senators like Pat Toomey, Mitch McConnell, other Republican senators that are much more comfortable aligning themselves with the military-industrial complex, the big military providers, whether they be Boeing, Lockheed Martin, etc. They would rather any day of the week spend their money doing that because they get money for their campaigns from those folks. It's as clear as day, and I mean, Citizens United busted this wide open, but having completely pretty much unregulated, and yes, there are regulations, but pretty much unlimited, unregulated amounts of money that could be spent from corporations given to campaign finance, to finance campaigns, is absolutely ridiculous. Pete, you see, and let me go on a slight diatribe here, but I've seen libertarian people and who I would consider people on the right go after, rightfully so, Nancy Pelosi and her stock trading issues. And I say issues because for her they're not an issue, but for the average American it is an issue, and it should be an issue. However, it is ironic that some of the folks would never call for the complete outright banning of stock trading by congressional, congresspeople or by senators. They just want to LARP and say that they're, look at this corrupt Democrat, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, technically speaking, yes, she is doing all this stuff, but also there's a lot of other people doing it too. So why not attack the entirety of the system? It's frustrating because the insider trading is an issue, and it's like, regardless of it, like, these folks are getting campaign donations from corporations across the board, right? And I'm not excusing Nancy Pelosi, but I just want to point out that the fact is that every time I see the criticism from a right winger, it's never like, hey, we should go after Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. It's always just like, hey, Nancy Pelosi is bad, and like, yeah, she is bad for doing that stuff. Like, we don't have to argue. It's like, well, we can push for banning people from trading stocks once they hold office. That is a real, tangible, systematic change. But you don't support that because you only care about owning the libs. So that is something that I just quickly wanted to rant about, because frankly this next article has a picture of Nancy Pelosi, and it kind of ties together in the campaign finance piece with that military-industrial complex focusing specifically on the weapons and not the people, never protecting the people, never fighting for the VA. As Bernie Sanders has chaired, I believe, the Veterans Affairs Committee. So as somebody that gets labeled as all these crazy things, he's the one fighting for it. People like him are the ones fighting for our veterans. Now, I will show you where we will transition here. And this is what really triggered me, is seeing Nancy Pelosi here on this page. So from CNBC here, we just have a quick article about the CHIPS bill. And this bill, it's technically CHIPS and Science Act, which will invest money. I'll read it specifically so I don't misquote it. But President Joe Biden is set to sign into law a bipartisan bill to invest billions of dollars in domestic semiconductor manufacturing and science research, with the aim of boosting the U.S. competitiveness with China and other foreign rivals. So that bit is important to note. Yes, chips and science. Absolutely. I know it doesn't. It sounds made up, but it is chips and science. But these semiconductors are the things that go into cars. They go into making computers functionally. So these things have been if you are a video game nut, or you are a car person, or you've just noticed the increase in used car sales versus new car sales, or the prices of them being higher, stand still. Hopefully that's still running. We can make sure of that. But if you're in chat, if you can, man, I have a lot of work going on downstairs in my house right now, so just want to make sure that the stream is still live. But regardless, the CHIPS bill is one that is going to increase spending significantly in our country on manufacturing jobs in creating. Okay, good. As long as you can still hear me, we're good. So it's a bill that is going to create manufacturing jobs and make sure that we have production of vital infrastructure, semiconductors, which run everything like from a computer to a car to a factory, made in America, so that we're not reliant upon a foreign supply chain to get these things that are vital for our country. I don't care about the fight with China as much as I care about having an independent economy, which to me is very important. I've always been one to stress that we should have manufacturing jobs here. And that's another bit, is that there are some specific non-compete bits that are put into this bill that would put basically our workers getting a certain amount of pay. They would get benefits, which is good. Just making sure that we're not just outsourcing things immediately. So these investments are not gonna pay off like immediately. They're not gonna pay off before the election. But these are things that are going to, in the long term, create a more sustainable economy, a more sustainable supply chain. And the reason why that's important is because we don't know when the next break in the supply chain is. No one knew that COVID was going to come up in 2019, like out of nowhere. Just China has all these cases before all of us, and then the supply chain shuts down. So this type of bill, which by the way, this one was also shut down because of the Schumer and Manchin package, as it says here. This is like the type of bill that is really, really good for just the average American. I mean, I don't even know how to put it any better than just saying, like, if you want to drive up wages, you want to increase jobs, you want to have manufacturing jobs, ones that might not necessarily require a college degree, ones that could possibly come from straight trade schools. These are jobs, good paying jobs that will bolster economies in our country. And frankly, I believe that these factories are going to be built in like the heartland. So again, investing in those states where they might economically be more reliant on other states or a foreign supply chain. So unlike, New York or California, where you're on the coast, if you're in Michigan or you're in Wyoming and you're in the middle of the country, this is creating a economic hub for people to move there. It's creating an economic hub for people that can thrive, to buy real estate, to invest, to start businesses. Because when you have big businesses like this, or sorry, not necessarily big businesses, but big investments, you get like this spin-off effect, right? So if you have, like, I'm in Doylestown. If you have like a hop and a skip over to certain spots over in New Jersey. I mean, a lot of people work for Johnson & Johnson. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies over there, but they set home in Doylestown. This creates economic opportunity to start small businesses in this town, and it's like a webbing effect, right? So you can start restaurants, you can start bookstores, you can start theaters, you can have local entertainment, etc. It all starts to spread out around that. You can have people like me be your accountant in there. So it's like the spin-off effect of this. So yes, on the surface, it's just about semiconductors, but also it's important to highlight that in the long term, we are investing in the American dream for honestly, like the simplest way of putting it. We're providing people a way to get jobs. We're providing safety in our supply chain, and we're developing parts of the country that didn't always have like Amazon banging down the door, which, like, let's be honest, like, you're probably better off that Amazon's not banging down your door. But regardless, that's what I mean, is you and I will see a direct benefit, not in the short term, but in the long term, as hopefully car prices go down and graphics cards go down in prices. which go into all these other bits and pieces of the computers that run our economy. So it's a nice investment that, yet again, Republicans oppose, despite LARPing and acting like they care about middle America, acting like they care about blue-collar workers. They don't. So, speaking of middle America, the next thing we have on the agenda here today is a little bit of an analysis of the post-Roe world that we're living in. And specifically yesterday there was a bunch of primaries. On Tuesday night, there was primaries in Michigan, in Missouri, I think, and Kansas was one of them. And in Kansas, there was a constitutional amendment that was proposed in order to revoke or rescind the state constitutional right to an abortion in Kansas. So, for context, Kansas has in their state constitution, has the right to an abortion enshrined. I think it's 22 weeks, so it's 2 weeks shorter than the standard of Casey and Roe. But regardless, it is still set in stone. This amendment to the Constitution was proposed, and it is written in a certain way, and we have discussed this here in Pennsylvania. And I'm if you are from Kansas or you know someone from Kansas that is organized around this specific issue and this specific amendment, please let me know, because the framing of it is pretty bad. And let me show you all what I'm talking about. So it says, should the Kansas Constitution be amended to remove protections of abortion rights? So if you were just reading that, it seems like, okay, should they be amended to remove protections of abortion rights? Well, no, right? If you're pro-choice, right? However, when crafting these constitutional amendments, parties, and I will say, and I mean not like political parties in that saying, but parties that have an interest in crafting these, but specifically the Republican Party here and in Pennsylvania, write bills so that it is a yes vote for their side. I know this sounds silly, but most times when there is a bill, or an amendment to the Constitution that is direct democracy, people vote yes, regardless of what it is. Because the convoluted language, a lot of people vote yes because they think it's a good thing, whatever it might be. And that can be an indictment of the American populace if you really want it to be. Have fun with that. But it's really about tricking people into thinking, okay, I don't understand what this question is, or I'm afraid to make the wrong choice, and people don't see it until they're in the ballot box. However, in this case, we saw an unprecedented turnout of, frankly, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, because in this case, you can vote on the amendment if you're an independent. Unprecedented amount. I remember I was watching MSNBC's coverage of it last night, which I don't normally watch MSNBC, but Steve Kornacki has been hyped up by everybody, and literally everybody and their grandmother and mother. So, because I know so many grandmas, everyone loves him. So I was like, all right, let's check out what's going on here. And in that, I watched as it went from 0% reporting to 98% reporting in one of the counties. And what had happened is that what they do is they project how much of the actual populace is going to turn out. And when they do that, it is not always accurate. It is a historical basis that they use that looks at, okay, how many people have turned out in this year, in that year, blah, blah, blah. And it went from 0 to 98, which basically meant that just in mail-in ballots, because that's what they had counted, almost 100% of the normal population had turned out to vote for this primary, which is unprecedented. I can tell you, here in Bucks County, when we have an election, especially a primary election, we're lucky if we get 35, 40, 50%. Like, that's like really good. But we have this here, and it ended up with the right vote, no vote, getting 58.8% of the vote. This is a great outcome, a great, maybe not projection that we can look at, but something that can influence our future endeavors over the next couple of months leading into the November election. Because Kansas is not New York, Kansas is not California or New Jersey or any of these blue states. This is a red state. And for Kansas to get this overwhelming vote, this does not correlate to say that necessarily Democrats win. But it means that there are people that are paying attention to the issue. And I, again, will emphasize, there were robocalls. There were a ton of different messaging that's saying, oh, vote yes. It's actually to protect women's rights and stuff like that. Just totally convoluted, muddying the water just to make sure that people don't know what they're actually voting for. That was the plan, and it still didn't work. So I am begging you, if you know someone in Kansas organized around this issue, around this amendment, because if you are paying attention, I keep highlighting the Pennsylvania state Republicans. The GOP here explicitly is targeting a constitutional amendment that will do an all-out ban of abortion coming next year or the year after, whenever they can, because that's how they're going to get it passed. They're going to try to dodge a potential gubernatorial veto. Because that's how you do that, by the way, is if you control the House and the Senate in Pennsylvania, you can propose and get a constitutional amendment. I believe you have to do it in 2 consecutive sessions, and then it will be on the ballot. So next year, 2023, when people aren't paying attention as much, they will throw it on the ballot and say, hey, do you want to ban abortion? And that's when we have to make sure that we're educating the voters, making sure that they know that whatever the outcome is, it's probably a no vote, because that's how they phrase the words. They phrase the questions, especially it's dubious. It's extremely dubious to have that in Pennsylvania, the way that they do it, but it is it's just how they do it. It's just constantly, every single time. And just to emphasize here, there's recent polling that's showing that overwhelmingly people are opposed to the overturning of Roe. People are really getting more turned out. I couldn't find I couldn't access a poll that came out of the USA Today that without signing up for it. But there was another poll that increased the likelihood of Democrats to vote from a very low, 30% to over 60% based on the overturning of Roe. I mean, you look at this stat. Do you oppose the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe? 88% of Democrats, 20% of Republicans, and 53% of independents. So look at these numbers, and if you can just piece together how we craft a winning message here, this is the ticket. And it sucks that it has to come at the expense of frankly of all women's rights and women's reproductive rights here. But the only way that we're going to fight and claw back is through activism on the ground and electoralism at the polls. There's 2 ways that we're going to have to do it. They have to work in tandem. One can't do one can't do it. Like, the electoral wing can't do anything without activists pushing it, right? And the activists can't do anything without changing the actual systems of the government. So they have to work hand in hand to fight for all reproductive rights. Because, as we know, they're not going to stop here. The Supreme Court overturned Roe. They're not going to stop there. It's going to go to Obergefell, and they're going to go to, I forget off the top of my head the name of the one for birth control. And they're just going to keep chipping away at these 14th Amendment protections and just keep throwing them away. So we have to organize. We have to know, okay, activism's great, electoralism's great, or maybe they're not great on their own, but together they form something greater and larger than just in their individual parts. So that is what happened in Kansas. And we're talking about the Supreme Court and what they're doing to us, and the unprecedented rolling back of rights. And it's funny how actually this is going to draw everything together here, and you show the importance of electoralism, of the Supreme Court, and of upholding our democracy in general. But here in Pennsylvania, we have this thing called Act 77, and Stephen Caruso, he writes a lot for Spotlight PA. He covered this issue, and this week, the state Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, so not the one with Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and all that, the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania upheld Act 77. So let me explain what Act 77 is, how we got here, and why it's important that we hold it. Act 77 is the act that Republicans passed and was signed by Democrat Governor Tom Wolf into law. This act created the mail-in ballot process. Now, it did not create, and I emphasize this because I got into an argument with a Trump crony, like literally from Trump's inner circle on Twitter, but it did not create the concept of mailing in a ballot, but it created its own system of no excuse mail-in ballots, which increased voter turnout and voter participation since 2019, and specifically in 2020 when we saw the coronavirus impacting our elections. Act 77 was passed, and it has specific stipulations that played into Republican mistrust in the mail-in ballots in 2020. The first being, and the most important, I would say this is the most important thing. You cannot start counting mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania in the county board of elections until the polls close on election day. So election day, the polls close at 8 p.m. So if you have 30-40% of the vote that is cast by mail, as we did in 2020, which is probably more, I think, than that, the processing of these ballots doesn't start until 8 p.m. And that is why you get the misconception that there's just all these votes appearing overnight. Oh, how did they swing the vote so much? Just in my election in 2021 alone, I went from a deficit of a couple hundred votes, like literally like 500, 600 votes, to 86 votes because of the mail-in ballot gap that we see in the way and how Democratic voters, frankly, turn out and vote. That's not to say exclusively Democrats vote by mail. Republicans use this system too. In particular, a lot of elderly folks use this mail-in ballot system, and it's effective. It's important to get them to vote. And look, they might not vote the same way as me, but I would rather have more people vote and fight over the issues, then less people vote because I disagree with them and I don't want them to vote. More people voting, first of all, does help progressive causes because most people are more progressive than most media outlets will tell you, or most people really think. This act was opposed from the day that it passed, basically, by the Republicans, even though it was their bill. And specifically in 2020, we saw a giant reversal by them because they were like, oh no, Trump doesn't like mail-in ballots because there's potential fraud, which, yes, any system, mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, drop boxes, which drop boxes were something that have been upheld as well in the appellate process here. All of these things, as well as in-person voting, as well as any other type of voting, as well as any other type of system, frankly, has its flaws and has the potential for, fraud or issues, right? But literally, we're talking about like 5-6 people out of billions since these systems have been processed, that have been prosecuted since there's a study, I think it was from 2000 to 2016 or 2014, so my numbers are a little out of date, but even in 2020, like the people that committed fraud were Trump people trying to prove that they could get away with it. John Fetterman has a lot of tweets about that. You can go back and check his messaging on that, which is great. The mail-in ballot process, though, is pretty airtight. It helps a lot of people get access to the ballot. You can only drop your ballot off in the in the drop boxes, which I think is kind of dumb, but if that's the case to keep them, then fine. There's a little convolution around like what you actually have to do, like envelopes and signatures and whatever. But those are kinks that we're going to work out here in Pennsylvania. But in the end, Pennsylvania's Supreme Court is elected positions. These people are elected by the people. And we've had multiple elections. They voted 5-2 for this. And it's majority Democrat, but not 5-2, frankly. But this is how building from the ground up, working against systems that may seem insurmountable, may seem like they're rigged, because some of them are as close to rigged as they can be. It builds and builds and builds and builds over time to get more people engaged, more people involved in our democracy, and that is always a good thing. So this Act 77 will remain in place, which will help us have more people vote in November in 2022 and beyond. And again, I will point out to any potential Republicans or Libertarians or anyone that's not left of center, if you have a problem with the mail-in ballot system, specifically, if you are tired of having your candidate, whether it's Donald Trump, or you have a, congressional person, whatever, and you're tired of them like leading in the beginning and then just dropping off, ask your representative to pass something that would change the processing time of the boards of elections in the counties. Because if they could pre-count the votes, you wouldn't have to worry about that. The spooky midnight thing, because they have to hire, like in the board of elections, they have to hire dozens and dozens of people to process these just for election night. If you spread it out over 3 weeks that you're getting the mail-in ballot returns, you will have ample time to react, to watch, to engage, to see that they're processing them correctly. There's no rush, and they're all done before election night. And you can get 99% of precincts completed, or whatever it is, 95 if you want to say, to be safe. Super, super quick and safe and easily. So If you don't like the way that the mail-in ballots are processed, I'm with you. So go and lobby your state representative, your state senator on that, rather than complaining about more people voting. So that is Act 77, and luckily we have that being upheld. Now, just to close out the fun show that we're having on a lot of legislation and moving parts and pieces, I would be a little remiss to not mention this video clip, or show this video clip just for fun, because it's funny to see the reaction. For those who don't know, Alex Jones is on trial for defamation of the Sandy Hook parents. The Sandy Hook shooting that happened back in, I believe, 2014 when I was in high school. And this was a shooting of elementary school kids. And Alex Jones basically said it was a fraud, it was fake, these people are paid actors, all this stuff. And now he's on trial because obviously it wasn't fake. These kids actually did die. And they sued him for defamation. And I guess I won't spoil what happens in the video, but we will discuss it in a second here. But let's just enjoy Alex Jones' reaction to his phone records being shown in the court without his knowledge beforehand.
Mr. Jones, you know how an iPhone works, right? You've had iPhone text messaging for several years now.
Yeah.
What does it mean if the messages are in blue? Whose messages are those? Whose phone is this taken from?
I don't know whose phone's taken from. I mean, I turned the phone over and said, take the stuff off.
Can I have you look in the very bottom below the very bottom left corner? Is that your phone number?
Yes. So you did get my text messages. And it said you didn't. Nice trick.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Oh.
Indeed. You didn't give this text message to me. You don't know where this came from. Do you know where I got this?
No.
Mr. Jones, did you know that 12 days ago, your attorneys messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years, and when informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protect it in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have a text message about Sandy Hook. Did you know that?
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment. I gave them my phone, and then...
Mr. Jones, you need to answer the question.
No,
Did you know this happened?
No, I didn't know this happened. But I mean, I told you I gave them the phone over. Just
But
And
answer
you
the
said,
question.
you said in your deposition, you searched your phone. You said you pulled down the text, did the search function for Sandy Hook. That's what you said, Mr. Jones, correct?
And I had several different phones with this number, but I did, yeah. Well, of course, I mean, that's why you got it.
No, Mr. Jones, that's not what happened.
My lawyer sent it to you, but I'm hiding it. Okay.
Mr. Jones,
Mr. Jones,
please just answer questions. There's no question. Mr. Bankston also only asks questions.
Sure. Mr. Jones.
That lawyer is going to get absolutely... Oh, man. Oh, just look at this. What a great encapsulation of how Alex Jones, poor me, my phone records. Screw him, right? He is... Look, there's comedic factors of what a lot of these far-right folks do and say sometimes, right? Like, this guy is extremely out there. But there's real, tangible harm that someone like Alex Jones causes. And sending people into, Comet Ping Pong or whatever it was to kill, to shoot up people that were doing Pizzagate or whatever it is, right? And these fake conspiracies saying that these things aren't real. And look, I'll be honest with you. And I don't think I've ever talked about this before. The first conspiracy video that I've ever seen, like knowingly seen, was in 2014. Alex Jones claiming that the shooting was fake. Because I think the reason why I saw it was because I was trying to figure out how could this happen. I was 17 or 18, and I didn't understand like how this happened. And like, I know that it's like sounds almost naive or silly, and just saying like, well, of course these things happen all the time. But that one, I know like there's been like Uvalde and like other school shootings, but that one was really, really specifically bad. And I think that people, even like myself, were looking for like, how could this possibly happen? Now, I didn't believe, obviously, that it was fake, but this is what was coming up in the algorithm on YouTube at the time. So when people talk about deplatforming, this is an extremely tangible, pungent example of how someone that is causing real life harm to people should be deplatformed, and how it takes them out of the cultural zeitgeist that is important for them to impact people in that way and get their ideas into people's heads. Now, he is a specifically bad person having that platform. There are arguments about deplatforming, and we can go, on and on and on about that stuff. But when it boils down to should we just point and make fun at this guy? At this point, I think it's just fun to just like, there's nothing wrong with like pointing at this guy and just saying like, dude, you're a lunatic, you caused all these people harm, and sorry, like now you gotta just get laughed at and publicly humiliated because your lawyer purposely or non-purposely leaked your entire phone records to the opposition's lawyer, and you didn't even know, and you tried to lie about it under oath. You're an idiot, and you deserve. I forget what he says. There's a classic Alex Jones clips that just says, "You deserve everything that happens to you, scum." I think that's what it is. So it's applicable here for Alex Jones. Defamation lawsuit, civil suit, so you're not going to go to jail or anything, but still, people should be held to account for what they do and say. With that being said, thank you so much for watching tonight. That is the show. I got all that in within an hour, so even with a technical hiccup, if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and hit the thumbs up. Turn the bell button on for notifications for when we go live. Sometimes I don't always get like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram posts out beforehand, so just know that when we go live, you can do that by hitting that bell button. You can also follow the show, Greater Society Media, on Instagram and on Facebook. You can do much more by following me on Twitter and sharing our clips at Con O'Hanlon. That way that you can engage with me. You can tell me who you want to have on as a guest, etc., etc., etc. And by the way, Jenny, thank you for saying that I have a bright future here on YouTube. I don't know that I'll be famous any day, but just talking about progressive politics and stuff like that and organizing here is very important to me. So again, and I'll emphasize this before I close again, but if you know somebody that was working on that Kansas amendment, I am serious that I would like to talk with them, either if it's on the show or privately. I need to figure out how to strategically message around these constitutional amendments that are going to be coming up in the next couple of years. So please let me know if you know somebody. You can email the show at greatersocietymedia@gmail.com. I'm on TikTok. You can follow me there. And if you are listening to the show on Apple or Spotify, or if you are watching on YouTube but you would prefer to listen to it on the drive or whatever it is, the show is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And lastly, if you enjoy what we're doing here on the program, you can support the show for as little as $5 a month. And that helps me pay for my editor, Josh, and we work out whatever we have to do, but it gets us these wonderful graphics that are below me. It gets to pay for things like this microphone. It helps us cover the costs, actually, because I am running at a loss. That's how I do these things, because to me it's important to get the message out. So, but if you want to help us push back against that loss and maybe build something bigger, which is the goal, patreon.com/Greater Society Media. With all that being said, if you want to see specific guests, specific topics, you know where to find me now, on Twitter, or email us, and we will get those things done. Go out, and while you're here, go and check out my previous episode with Sarah Zhang and David McMahon talking about local issues. So if you want to learn about more local issues, that's a great episode. Or you can go back to a candidate interview with Ashley Ehas, which is 2 weeks ago. Or if you want to go and talk and check out my interview with Malcolm Kenyatta, who was a former Senate candidate but also a state representative here in Pennsylvania, that is 3 episodes ago. So you have plenty that you can go and check out if you are interested in learning more about progressive politics here in Pennsylvania and in America. So thank you all so much for watching. Alex Jones is a clown. I have that right. And until next time, stay safe. Peace.